quite the pleasure to be here, and thank you all for coming out and coming in on this beautiful Sunday, beautiful fall Sunday. As Abby said, we'll be bringing a lot of our original arrangements, one original composition, and actually a few pieces composed, or one piece composed for the guitar trio. It's been a wonderful weekend here in Michigan. A lot of driving from Rochester out here and everything, and a lot of driving still back there, but it's been quite the pleasure, and I hope it's quite the pleasure to share this evening or this afternoon with you in this music.
Great, cool. You want to talk about what you just played?
Sure. Well, the piece you just heard was one of our earliest arrangements. Perhaps the first arrangement I've made for a trio, guitar trio, and it's kind of the blending of two very distinct worlds. Musically, perhaps not so, but one of them is a John Dowland tune, a fantasy for the lute, the solo lute, one of his chromatic fantasies that has this descending chromatic line. And the other one, John Dowland, if you don't know, was a 1600s lutenist in the court of England. And the other bit of music that comes from this is Elomar Figueira Melo from the 1980s in Brazil, the hinterlands of Brazil. So very distinct in terms of time period and geography, but musically I find them very connected in a sort of a recitative-like sort of approach to melody and the sort of devotion to the melody and the accompaniment devoted to the melody. And sort of writing, I guess, on the Renaissance, late Renaissance stuff, we will go on to Tobias Hume, another English composer. These are two pieces of his: Sweet Music, the Earl of Salisbury's favorite, and Masque, the Earl of Sussex delight. And I hope you enjoy.
the next piece we're going to play is another arrangement made by Bernardo. It's by Brazilian composer Egberto Gismonti, who is a pretty cutting-edge composer from Brazil these days. He is a composer, but he's also a very virtuosic pianist and a virtuosic guitarist. He doesn't play a 6-string guitar, he plays a 10-string guitar. It's just have to play more strings than anybody else. So this is one of his more melodic, slower pieces called Cigana, which translates as a gypsy woman. And it's on our album, which we don't want to take home. We'll talk more about that later.
much. I guess I'll talk now for a little bit. Welcome, everyone. So good to see a lot of familiar faces, which is really wonderful. A lot of friends from the area, so thanks so much for coming out. I really appreciate that. And it's really great to bring Ken and Bernardo to my home state for a couple of concerts this weekend. We played in Saginaw on Friday night at Saginaw Valley State University, which is where I was teaching the last 2 years. And now we're here in Ann Arbor, which is where I was living for the last 2 years with my wife, Taylor. Before I moved back to Rochester to reunite with Trio Ghidorah. So it's really great to be here sharing some music with you. As Abby mentioned, the title of the program is Dances and Fantasies, which is the same as the title of our first album, which came out last year, Dances and Fantasies. And so far, you've heard this concept in the pieces that we've played. There's been dance in the first piece from a more kind of popular Brazilian style, and then there's been fantasy evoked in some of these more kind of imaginative, meditative pieces. So next we're going to bring it back to dance with Mozart, and this is a movement from one of his string quartets. And I'm going to let Bernardo talk about that a little bit since he arranged it for guitar trio.
Yes. So this was as far as arrangements go, this was an easy one. I think it was our teachers at Eastman, Bruce Frank, a very famous guy there, sort of taught this piece as a form of to demonstrate how Mozart puts everything kind of simply there and everything is just in place. And then I went home and I was like, I think this could fit guitar trio. And well, as he mentioned, everything was right in place and everything fell right in place, although the voices were very easy to sort of divide amongst the three guitars. But as a string quartet, we do have a fourth voice that gets shared between the two players. It's quite a lively minuet as far as minuets are concerned. It's got a little bit of energy into it, a little bit of fire, and quite a nice little trio that accompanies it. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have a set of 3 Spanish folk songs that we're going to play. I forgot if there's the translations in the program. The first one translated as "They jump and they dance." We won't be jumping, but feel free. The second one is called Ines, and I think one of the people working here is
One of the crew.
yeah. So this one's for you. And the last one is called El Vito, which I don't know too much about this song, but a friend of ours showed us a version that Pete Seeger actually sang, because back in the day, they like to put English lyrics to folk songs from other cultures. So hope you enjoy the 3 Spanish folk songs arranged by Carlos Bornell.
Well, thank you very much for sticking around. The next piece we move on to, it's a little special, perhaps for me a little bit more, but for everybody, I think, because it's one of the few pieces, we play, I think, 2 on the program right now that are actually written for the guitar trio ensemble. And this one perhaps a little bit more special because I personally wrote it.
Yeah.
Thank you. But it's quite the pleasure to play, especially with these guys, and it's been a work in progress, of course, since I composed it and since we started playing together, and it's quite the beautiful experience to sort of hear your own composition sort of coming to life and sort of changing things here and there and trying to make it even better as we go. It's a lovely piece, also based on J.S. Bach. This one a little bit more specific than the Villa Lobos earlier. This one with the actual chorale theme coming at the end. So this piece is composed in a sort of reverse variations form, where the variations come before the piece. And the general idea or the concept of the piece, called Verdades Falsas, or false truths, is from the idea of how our memories tend to lie to us and how we often sort of engage with what we think is the truth, but lo and behold, we are always mistaken, or often mistaken. So it's the concept of trying to remember the melody from this theme, from this chorale theme, and how it sort of ends up playing and leading us in various different directions, eventually finding the reality, or the true, as Tom Hanks once said.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sitting tight for such a long time. If you want, you can stand up and move around a little bit. We can take the time to tune up and just don't hit your neighbors. And then moving on from what we just played, something maybe more on the popular vein, we're going to play a piece by Astor Piazzolla, who was from Argentina, and he kind of revived the tango tradition and called his tango the new tango, nuevo tango. But this one is actually a more lyrical one, not as bombastic. This one's called Oblivion, and then following right after is Stravinsky tango, which Stravinsky is not from Argentina, but tango was a very popular kind of music in the first half of 20th century. So after he moved from Russia to Paris, he eventually settled in the United States and needed some money. So he wrote a tango that is very quirky and kind of sounds like a tango, kind of doesn't sound like a tango. So you can see if, which spectrum it fits on.
And I just wanted to mention again our album, Dances and Fantasies. Both of these next two pieces are also on that recording, and we'd love to share that with as many people as possible. So if you're interested in picking one up after the show, you certainly may. And we'd be happy to chat with you after the show too. That's always a lot of fun for us. And that form of support, buying our album, also helps us continue on, which is really important. You know, I love playing with these guys. It's a lot of fun, and it's definitely an honor to bring them out to Michigan. So yeah, your patronage in that form is also very, very helpful. All right, thank you.
This goes out to those who perhaps have not been to a guitar concert before. But there's usually a good joke that goes about we spend half the time tuning and the other half playing out of tune. So we do apologize, but it comes with the territory. And another way you can maybe have noticed, if you don't also are familiar with the guitar, is that in order to sort of change the range or sort of utilize different sort of open strings on the guitar, we have this wonderful device called the capo, which you can sort of put on any fret of the guitar that Erik has right there on the 3rd fret right now. So it just changes where the open strings of the guitar end up being, and it kind of helps with arranging stuff, especially in weird keys for the guitar, let's just say.
These next two movements come from a string quartet by Philip Glass, who is an American composer in the minimalist style. So this will kind of change the musical language up a little bit here. And this comes from a string quartet number 3 called Mishima. And it gets that name because this music was also part of the film score for a movie called Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, which is about a Japanese literary and political figure in the mid-20th century. Anyway, the minimalist part is kind of fun, and I think it works well on guitar. You'll hear a pulsing sort of sense or texture throughout both of these pieces. And that works really well with plucked string instruments because you'll hear our plucks and attacks coming at the same time, and we can create kind of waves of texture with that, which is really, really fun. And anyway, yeah, I hope you'll enjoy this arrangement of a Philip Glass's Mishima, 2 movements. Thank you.
composer, French romantic composer Emmanuel Chabrier. The first one is, they're both piano pieces arranged for guitar trio. The first one, Melancholy, is a lot of push and pull, very subtle sound. And the second one is Habanera, which, don't know if you notice, a lot of French composers in the 19th century were obsessed with Spain. The most famous might be Carmen. It's not from Spain, it's from France. So so this is another example of Spanish music, not written by Spanish composer. And as guitar players, we always find out where the Spanish music, and this one works really well for guitars. So hope you enjoy these two pieces by Chabrier.
Thank you.